your dog?
Which dog? 5.
Oh, that's
5.
true.
Yes.
Louie.
Louie. Well, Louie is the star of this film, it's
Yes.
true. And he's in Scotland. He was busy, Angelique. He had a very tight schedule, but I'm here to speak for him.
Well, I'm so glad that Louie could make the time to make the movie.
Yep.
Very important.
Yeah.
That to be there for you and with you. Was he a good boy?
Do you know what? He was not only a very good boy, but he had the time of his life. It's a bit tragic, but he lives in a pack of his relations. There's 5 of them. And he'd never been by himself before, and his sister, Dot, bullies him a little bit. So he had 8 weeks by himself. He was so happy, and sometimes he looks at me with this sort of, do you remember those days? Are we ever going back there? Look, it's heartbreaking.
But he completely involved himself in the story. His reactions are really phenomenal, and it's not possible, I don't believe you can have a dog, an animal in a film without having the owner in the film as well. So
I've worked with professional dogs. I made a film with Pedro Almodovar with a very famous Spanish star dog who's got a very, very, very well known advert who everybody knows. He's kind of like Lassie of Spain. And he was amazing. I mean, if you said to him, go and look sad, he'd do it. But the truth is, he wasn't really interested in me. He was interested in his person who was standing behind me with a sausage in his pocket. And, but Louie is really interested in me. So we could ask him to do anything.
When you kind of now are looking back on it and talking to people about it, what are kind of those standout emotions about the story that you are telling with this movie?
We were mining incredibly complex and intricate emotional territory, and the jumping off point was the relationship I had with my mother, who was still alive when we were making the film, and she sadly died when we were editing it. But it was really about a relationship between a mother and daughter, but not just any mother and daughter, a daughter who's middle-aged and a mother who's elderly, and with all the history of that relationship, with all the shared moments and experiences, and yet when they meet in this hotel, there's a lot that they don't know about each other.
And declaring, as she does at one point to her mother, you are a mystery person to me. I mean, that's a thing that I think, I've never heard anyone spotlight that before, but I think we all, to a certain extent, however involved we are in our mother's lives, however open she might be with us, we want more, always. It's astonishing to us that she could even exist without us. I mean, I remember when my children were very little, I don't think they'll mind me telling you this, but maybe they will, but I'm going to do it anyway. I remember they used to be, when they were very little, when they were about 6 or 7, they didn't like me talking about times before they were born. They really didn't like it. And I had to curtail myself until they got older. And then I remember this point coming when I could talk about before you were born and they didn't wince. And I think that's really very common. I think we are so entangled with our mothers.
And I have to say that, and I hope actually when audiences see this film, that it will have some kind of cathartic effect, because it certainly had a cathartic effect for me. I didn't think that when I was making the work, but then when my mother died during the edit, I realized I'd worked through so many of the thoughts and feelings while making the film. But I have to say, sitting here now, there are so many things I would like to talk to my mother about, and you realize that as a daughter, you can never have enough conversations.
And also something that the film very much looks at is the pain of thinking of your mother unhappy. And this feeling that we must solve our mother's unhappiness and the incapacity to do that. It's very, I think it's very tender, that. And we like to think we can solve everything for our mothers, and we can't.
But there is something selfish in that too. So it's looking at actually what is that really about you, oneself, than about them. And then when they're gone, you think, well, I wish I'd had other conversations with them that weren't about me.
In the practicality of it, you guys took a very interesting approach. You ended up having Tilda, ended up playing both mother and daughter in this. Kind of walk us through, one, the practical element of actually making that happen on screen.
It was about really taking all the gimmickry away from Tilda playing both these roles and shooting very, very simply. Julie and Rosalind have the same voice in the way that mothers and daughters often do. We didn't have a stand-in ever for either character, and Tilda's having a conversation with herself and sometimes with me. But the simplicity of it belies what Tilda achieved, because I think when the few people I know have seen the film, I don't think you can, it doesn't feel like Tilda doing both these people, playing both these parts.
What was it like for you to embody each of these two women?
Yeah, well, in many ways it was the most graceful and nourishing way of working that I can imagine. I mean, I have a sort of allergy to theatrical, performative presentations anyway, particularly in cinema. There was a challenge, the concept being you're going to play someone of 75 and you're going to play both people. There were all sorts of obstacles that we had to kind of get through to convince ourselves that didn't mean necessarily being theatrical or being performative or being constructed. And we just had to take this leap of faith that we could stay open, stay loose, stay natural, stay responsive rather than creative. That was the thing. There's nobody pushing anything down the lens at anybody. There's no grandstanding at all. It's just two people, not even characters, just responding to one another.
Can I say that we're talking about the technicalities as we sit here, but so much was about our conversation and knowing each other since we were 10 years old, and the unspoken. So it's not even a spoken conversation. It's just an understanding. We understand our mothers, we understand that generation. We know the territory so well, but we don't have to say it.
And we didn't necessarily know what to do, but we had a joint nose for what would feel false. And we just didn't want anything to feel fake, not even for 1 second. It was like avoiding icebergs, just steering away from anything fake or forced. That was almost the most sort of constructed thing we did, really.
But in doing that, it was sort of, because I had an image of something going across there, it was just, in taking away everything extraneous, it just was going to somewhere very deep. So I think this film, more than my other films, goes to a very deep, dark place.
What do you think your mothers would make of this film?
Well, that's a really interesting question. Do you mean our mothers as they walked amongst us, or do you mean our mothers now? And I'm not being spooky, but truly, I can imagine certain noises that my mother would have made while she was alive, but now she's all for it, no question. She's, dropped a lot of stuff, and I feel that as the conversation continues, because that's one of the things the film is about, and again, without wishing to scare any horses, it's about the fact that when we grieve, there's all sorts of things we have to give up. But we don't have to give up the conversation. Conversation go on forever. And in fact, can improve. It can get better, deeper, more relaxed, more shared. And the actual relationship can improve when one doesn't have to sort of carry all these sort of weird, mysterious bits of paraphernalia about roles. Our mothers tended to keep things from their children, to not feel comfortable with being too emotional, and certainly about their own lives. And so that whole mystery person built up. I think we are much less mysterious to our children. And I speak as a mother. A mother is not as hard on her child as we are on ourselves. And that's a shame. It's a shame that we're so tough on ourselves. So I think our mothers would be moved to see how tough we are on ourselves, and would hope that we would forgive ourselves.
But I think she would have seen it as a beautiful portrait of a relationship and enjoyed the spooky parts.
It is quite spooky.
But I'm very, very keen on Louie as well.
Definitely.
Louie's a star. I hope he's in the next film, the next collaboration.
He may be busy, we don't know. He has a lot of things going on, endorsements and...